So today I am 1,655 days sober. Welcome back to Booster Better. This one is slightly different. I've actually got one of my long-standing clients, good friend, and a superb tennis player, but not paddle player. Welcome to Series 4, Episode 6. I'm Kirby. How are you, legend?
I'm good, mate. You?
Oh, mate, I'm amazing. I'm super excited. Bit nervous for this one, but buzzing for it. Let's dive straight in, mate. What does Booster Better mean to Sam Kirby?
What does it mean to me? Everything. It, in all honesty, it saved my life. Yeah, I know that gets kind of like pushed around quite a lot, like the whole "you saved my life" bollocks, but it actually saved my life. So it means the world. It really does, and it's helped me beyond belief. In summary, yeah.
Like for you, like I'm going to go right back to the start with you.
Yeah.
As a kid, like I know for people that don't know, and people like you had a very close bond with your mum. You wear a ring that is hers or that commemorates hers as well.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me about your growing up. What was your childhood like?
It was a great childhood, but it was different. My parents split up when I was 3. It was really just me and mum growing up. She was obviously single parent and worked really hard. She didn't have like an amazing job, but she had she was like a family support worker. So she would go into like families who needed support, ironically, and people with, again, ironically, drug issues and so on and so forth. So it was just me and her really growing up. I would see my dad like on a birthday or Christmas or something like that, and then every Tuesday he would take me swimming up until the age of about maybe 12 or 13, and then I started to like get into other things, and I've never had a particularly close bond with my dad, so it was really just me and my mum's. Yeah, and then So yeah, that's kind of like the family side of things. It was me and my mum. I've got two older sisters. They're half sisters, but I see them as sisters. One has I never know what word to use nowadays, but we used to say handicapped, but I don't think you're meant to say that now. So special needs.
Yeah.
Fucking just changes all the time. And Sophie, and she lives in a home, like a special home in Bristol. But it was me, Sophie, and Mum, and then Kerry is my eldest sister. She's ancient. She's like in her 50s. So it was kind of from a young age. It was me and Sophie and Kerry at home, and then Kerry moved out quite early, and then my mum struggled because there was me young, and then there was Sophie, who's like 10 years older than me, with all the issues she had, and then she was trying to bring me up and trying to bring Sophie up, and then Sophie had all these issues, and so on and so forth. So eventually Sophie moved into a special home. So then it was just me and mum from about maybe 10, when I was about 10, something like that.
And what was it about the bond with your mum that was so special?
I know that everyone says that their mum is like the best mum in the world, and I get that, but she was like sometimes annoyingly calm. Yeah. And like I'd be like all irate and like, and she'd just be like so calm. She was just like, she knew what to say, and all of her friends, like her friend group, who weirdly they used to call themselves the tennis club, even though none of them played tennis. It was weird. if they had any issues, my mum was always the one they would call. She was like the go-to person. She was super kind. She was just an incredible person, and she even things like at Christmas and birthdays, like she would like really think about things, and like when she was buying like presents for like her grandkids or myself, it wouldn't just be like something of value, there you go. It would be like a load of thought went into it. There might be like a little letter with it, and it would normally be something like useful that would enhance or help your life, or like a memory box, or like just like stuff like that. She was just super super thoughtful. So yeah, I mean, obviously I'll speak later about when she passed and stuff, but like when she to me when she died was like losing both parents. That's sort of how I would describe her.
So she was a rock, kind of. So with that, like, so tell me about. Like, did you go on holidays? What was the setup? Was it just you and her, like against the world kind of vibe, or
Yeah, it was like yeah. And growing up, I would play a lot of sports and stuff, and she was always like, it was just me and her. And I guess that I wish that there was my mum with someone else. I could never have imagined my mum being with my dad, because they're like completely different people. I always find it bizarre that they were ever together. Granted, not for that long, but they were. But she, yeah, it was like me and her against the world, and she would just put me before anything that she needed or wanted. She would never like buy new stuff for her. She had like a winter wardrobe and a summer wardrobe. I don't know if this is a normal thing or not. And when the weather would start changing, she put her winter clothes in a suitcase under the bed and bring out the summer ones. But I would say, like, I didn't go without as a child, but we got by, and she found a way financially through everything, and even having a not particularly well paid job, and like she never, for example, she never like had a credit card, she never took out a loan. Like, she eventually owned the house in Bath, like all off of her own back, like on a very very average job. And what's interesting is that I and I'll talk about this in a bit obviously, but like, I've been so crap with money and decisions, and she was like the complete opposite of that. So yeah, she would do anything for me, and she always had my back, and she would always advise me. But I think one of the biggest reasons that I went down the, not reasons because you can't blame other people or other things, but maybe one of the triggers of why I went down the path that I went down was because it was only her. And little things like, there's certain things that you find harder to speak to your mum about than if you were speaking to, say, your dad. Or like, some advice that she would give me was amazing, but like sometimes I felt like I needed some male influence, and I would, yeah. So yeah,
so with that male influence you feel you didn't get? What is it? What is it you lacked?
I just felt like I just needed a male figure in my life to be able to, things like going and watching the football, going, or it wasn't like, my mum never did that because, um, I don't know, like going out for the day with your dad, or having your your first beer with your dad, or like, going on a bike ride with your dad or something like that. It was always harder for mum because she's a mum, right? So I felt like I just needed that other person, um, to do that, but I never really had it until until I met my tennis coach at the time, um, who, and I won't say names, like, but who literally became like my father figure. Um,
Just from knowing you and obviously coaching you and being beside you, do you feel that you still Do you feel you still crave that, or do you feel you still need that kind of? Do you feel that's something missing still in your life? Because like the reason I ask is obviously the people that aren't particularly in your life anymore. Are they? Do you feel like your influences and your events and whatever's happened to you would have changed if there was a father figure in your life, a constant one?
Yeah, I do. I do, because my mum, even though she would tell me and advise me on things, I had my mum wrap around my little finger, right, and
Yeah.
like she would like, and I love my mum like dearly, but if I had someone to go, like, you don't want to fucking do that. That's a really shit decision. Like, because I would hide a lot of things from her, especially as I grew up, like financially and what I was doing and where I was going and stuff like that. But if I had someone to go, no, you ain't going there, you're not doing that, then maybe it would have sort of guided me into more of a better path than I took.
Okay, cool. So what path did you took and how did that? So up until 12, 13, you were obviously still tight, really close to mum. You are, you mentioned there sports. You are very. I'm going to ask you to be a bit braggy because sometimes you get a bit humble and do that. But you are a very, very good tennis player and used to play against some of the greats that we know. So talk to me a bit about how good you were and what happened in that.
Well, it was a few stone ago. I'm not going to lie, but we're working on that. So when I was at primary school, I was never really interested. I was never thick, or like, I was pretty slightly above average when it came to like tests and general work at school and English, maths, science, and all that jazz. But I had absolutely zero fucking interest in it. It bored the fuck out of me. But I just love sport. And as soon as it was like break time or lunchtime or games or whatever, I was like in my element, and I absolutely adored it. And I would play cricket and tennis and football and everything, hockey, like everything, right? And I loved primary and junior school. It was like a kind of like safe haven of nice teachers and calm, and everything was cool. And then I left junior school and I went to a very, very well respected all boys state school, renowned for sport, more so renowned for like rugby, and a lot of the England players went there and stuff like that. And I never played a lot of rugby, because even though they wanted me to, because when I went to senior school, it was the most fucking eye-opening thing in the world. There was like 1,500 boys. I went from big fish, small pond, to little fish, big pond. What the fuck is going on? Like, I absolutely hated it. And it's weird because I've got mates who might even see this who loved it, and I hated it to the point where I just shrank into myself, and I would just do the lessons. I'd sit at the back of the class. I'd have friends at school and stuff like who I got on with well, and I saw out of school a bit, but I just kept myself to myself. I never got in trouble. I never got detention. I never got a report. I wouldn't give a fuck if I sat by myself at the end of the class, because at 12 years old, I had to make a decision. I played a lot of football and a lot of tennis. That's what it kind of came down to. And I had to make a decision whether I wanted to, or I didn't have to, but my mum sort of said, look, if you're really good at both, like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. And I had like my football coach saying one thing and my tennis coach saying another thing. And with football, I was being scouted for Southampton. I played for a team called Bath Arsenal, which fucking kills me because I hate Arsenal. But I was being scouted for Southampton. Excuse me. That could have gone well, but I decided to pick tennis. And when I was 11, I was playing in a local tennis tournament. My mum was working, and it was at a Bath Tennis Club, like literally just down the road from where I lived. And I went down there. I was playing this match, and I would speak to anybody, and I still do speak to anyone. sometimes myself. And there was this guy watching, and I was like, I literally went up to him, and I was at 11. I was like, "Who are you?" And he was like, "I'm so and so." And I was like, "Well, what do you do?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm a tennis coach in Bristol." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Are you going to watch me play?" And he's like, "Who's this fucking like?" I had confidence when I was doing sport, and apart from that, and I was playing, and I was going like 3-1 to me, 3-1, like talking to this guy, and then the next day I said, "Oh, you come," and he was a coach, and he had some players playing in the same tournament, and then the next day I said to my mum, "You've got to come and meet this guy." Meet this guy. He's a tennis coach in Bristol, and he said that he'd coach me, and he's saying he's really good. And I was just like, she was like, "Oh, okay, like it's all a bit weird." I remember my mum came to the tennis club, and she met him, and then my mum started driving me to Bristol, and I would do like 1 or possibly 2 like group lessons in the week, and I got quite good. And I was playing at Bristol, and we played in the shittiest places you could possibly imagine, in like some of the roughest parts of Bristol. It was proper hardcore, pissing down rain, snowing, like it was. But I loved it because this guy, and he became like a father figure to me. And I kept playing, and I kept playing, and then and I got quite good, and I started playing for the county, and I started playing in some national tournaments. And then at 14, my tennis coach, who was now at this point, like it sounds weird, like saying this, but like up before I was 14, when I was like 12, 13, and I'd known him, and my mum met him, and he'd come over dinner, and he became like a dad. Like I'd stay at his house at the weekends, and he had foster kids. It was all like, it was all a kosher, it wasn't like weird. And like he'd give me tennis lessons, and then he knew my mum was struggling, and so he'd give me some of his old rackets, and like he'd give me lessons, lessons for like half price, or my mum would pay half, and just a wonderful, wonderful human being who hugely helped in my tennis. And then at 14, he said, "Sam, I've got something to tell you. Going to Norway." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to Norway." And and I broke. And I was like, he went to Norway, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I hated school. My tennis coach had gone to Norway. It was just my mum, and so on and so. He then, my mum rang him and said, "You've got to help. Like Sam's on antidepressants. Like he doesn't know what to do with himself. Um, he's in a really bad way." And about a week later, he called my mum, and he said, "What do you think about him coming to Norway?" And I was 14. I remember my mum sat me down and was like, "Do you want to go and live in Norway?" And I was like, "What? Like, what are you on about?" It's like, "We're going to move to Norway." She's like, "No, you go and live in Norway." And I was like 14, like, I was like, "Yeah, all right." So I literally had a suitcase and some tennis rackets, and I moved to Bergen in Norway, and I was like a guinea pig for like a scholarship scheme there, and I got some free coaching, and my mum would send my coach some money, and we lived in this. It was like this massive house, but at the bottom there was like a converted barn that used to be like the pig stables and like where the horses were, and it had this massive thick door, I'll never forget. And we were like 20 meters from a fjord, and it was the most beautiful place. And I actually slept in what used to be the pigsty, and I was completely by myself in Norway. And I went to an international school, and that was a massive eye opener because it was a free international school, and 95% of the people that went there were from very, very poor countries who had no education. I went there, and it was like year 1 level stuff, and I found it a bit uneasy at times. 9/11 happened at the same time, and there was a bit of like, yeah, you see what I'm going with. So, and I tried to learn a bit of Norwegian anyway, and then I continued playing tennis, and I got sponsored by Wilson. I got to number 2 at 14. Sorry, at 15, I was number 2 in Norway under 16. So I did pretty well. And I was like, I'm going to be a tennis player. I'm going to be a tennis player. And it was like I had to do things for myself. My coach looked after me, but like I had to do shit off my own back that you must think like my mum's like mad sending me, but like I had this shit phone. And I remember once going to this tournament in Stavanger, which was fucking miles away from where I lived in Bergen. I had 2 text messages worth of credit left on this phone, and I had 15 £15 worth of krona, Norwegian money. And I got on this bus by myself to this tennis tournament, and I used to sleep on the tennis courts because I couldn't afford hotels. It's mental. So, and everything's indoors in Norway, right? All the courts are indoors because obviously it's fucking freezing and all the rest of it. And I used to go to a tournament, I'd sign in and I'd say to the referee, I'd say, look, I've got nowhere to stay. I was 14, 15. I said, can I sleep on the courts? And they were like, yeah, if you want. And I must have done that about 20 times. But for this one specific tournament, I'd won a few matches. And I don't know how I used to go and buy like pasta and then cook it in the kitchen at the tennis club and eat that, 50p's worth of pasta. And then I got down to like my last fiver and I had 1 text message left because I had to message saying I got there. And I won again. And the guy said to me, Sam, you can't stay here tonight because there was some event going on or something going on. And I was like, fuck, where am I going to stay? And I started chatting to this, I think he was Russian or something, this kiddie. And I said, look, a bit of a weird one, but do you live in? He's like, yeah, I live in the village. Anyway, I ended up staying at his mum and grandma's house for the evening because I'd won. And with my last £5, I bought his mum like a little box of chocolates to say thank you. And then luckily the next day I lost my match. It was like an under-18s tournament. Because I was thinking, fuck, if I win again, what am I going to do? Like, where am I going to stay? I've got no money left for food or drink. Anyway, so then I came back, and that was the sort of like thing I was doing up until I was sort of 15 and a half. And then I had to come back, and I was a bit lost. I was like really missing my coach, and I didn't know what to do. So I got another coach back home, but it was sort of okay, and I was sort of bumbling along. But where I came back, I had to go back a year at the school. And that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do because it was like, who do I hang about with? Do I hang about with my old mates who I haven't seen for a year or my new mates that are in my year? Because I had to go back here because I missed my first year of GCSEs. And it was one of the worst years of my life. It was horrendous. And I hated every second of it. I was trying to play a bit of tennis on the side. And I was like, Mum, what the fuck are we going to do? And then I saw this thing, I think it was like, I don't know, on the radio or something. And it was to get a tennis scholarship to Sutton Tennis Academy. And my mum was like, oh, we'll go to the open day, we'll have a look. And it's this unbelievable tennis centre in South London. And they offer like 16 places a year to upcoming young tennis players. But you have to pay for it, right? And you have to pay for the accommodation, you have to pay for your food, and da-da-da-da-da. So everyone there's there, and they're pulling up in like their fucking Porsches and Range Rovers. My mum's like grinding in this old Escort. Like, we got there. We're like, yes, we used to have to rock it to start the car, to like get the fuel like moving around the engine. We used to have to rock it. It was quite funny. Anyway, we pulled in and I played this kiddie and it was all being watched by like the head guy and I beat this kid 6-love. And cut long story short, they offered me a place and I was like, and then my mum was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to afford this. I did things like I went in the local newspaper. I got some money off an 89-year-old man who was going to give me £1,000, but he could only give me 500 quid because he got robbed the week before. And I went, I know, just harsh. And I went on a 70-mile bike ride and I got sponsored by people in the local tennis club. I went on the news and she was like, it still isn't enough. My mum remortgaged and I did my first year and then I went into Sutton. I mean, somehow I managed to scrape it together. And I got my first year and I did my first year at Sutton. And I I was doing really well. I was winning a lot of tournaments, and I got relatively high up, ranking in the country, and I was like, shit, I really could do this. And then that was it. That was the end of that year. And then I came back to Bath, and I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? And I remember going back up to Sutton one weekend to see some friends that were still there, because most people did like 2 or 3 years and then went on and did challenger events and stuff like that. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I started speaking to the guy who ran the place, and I just burst into tears. He was like, you can come back if you want. I'm like, but I can't. Like, I don't fit. My mum doesn't have the money. And I was helping my mate coach up at Bath University one Thursday evening. I'll never forget. And it was a load of doctors and knee surgeons and well-off people. And I was like, I really want to go back, but and this guy turned around and was like, I'll give you the money. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, yeah, I'll give you the money. And he came around to my mum's house about a week later, and he wrote her a check for $7,000. And I was like, what the fuck? I met this guy once helping a mate at like 17 years old coach tennis. And then my mum had to remortgage again, and eventually I managed to get back there, and I had to do school at the same time. And I got quite badly injured and so on and so forth. But I did, sorry, I'm babbling on a bit. I eventually got to 18, and I then had to leave Sutton again. And I realised at that point, I had a knackered shoulder, a knackered knee. We couldn't afford. It got to a point where I would have had to have travelled and done like 30 or 40 tournaments a year in something called satellite events. I think they're called something else now. But basically, you'd have like one in Australia, one in India. They'd be like weekly, and you'd just fly around, try and get enough points and able to like play in like bigger tournaments. And we were like, well, how much do we need for that? And they were like, oh, minimum $200,000 a year. We're like, yeah. I mean, I know some doctors, I ain't getting $200,000. So at that point, I just had to go, that was the end of my tennis playing career, if you like.
So then what backup did you have in that respect? Like, your mum had remortgaged you twice, so your mum had no more extra money, and then what, you didn't like school, you didn't particularly, you weren't thick, but you didn't particularly enjoy it. So what now?
Well, this was the thing. I always knew that if I wasn't going to be a tennis player, I was going to be a tennis coach. So I was like, well, I need to be a tennis coach. So I then got a job at a local tennis club, and I was doing a bit of coaching there, and I was living with mum. And this is because I had failed, if you like, to be a tennis player. I think that this is where, like the drinking and the drugs came into it. Yeah.
So what was your like first, when you say drinking drugs come into it, like had you drunk before then, or because of like the tennis you were like pretty like good, or what was like the gateway?
So the second year in Sutton, when we were like 17, everyone had fake IDs, and we'd go into like maybe, I don't know, 6 times over the course of the year. We'd go into like Kingston and we'd get drunk, and then we'd come home, and it was like I would just be like everyone else at 17, 18, like going out and getting drunk. I kind of sort of realised in the last 6 months of Sutton that I wasn't going to be a tennis player, so I was just like, oh, fuck it, like. And I started going out, and I'll never forget, there was and I don't know whether it's linked or not, but there was a pub literally about 200 metres down the road from the houses that we stayed in, proper shit area called Rose Hill, right next to St Hilary Estate, which was voted the second roughest estate in England. But anyway, we used to have to put our money in our socks to go to Sainsbury's. And this pub was doing double shots of whiskey for £1. And I saw like an A board outside of it. And I hate whiskey, but I remember getting a few people from the club being like, it was like a Thursday night, going down this absolute shithole of pub and just getting twatted on whiskey. And the guy who's still a really good mate of mine that I shared the room with, when we would go back for the weekend, so he was from Brighton and I was obviously from Bath. We'd bring like 4 cans of Thatchers back in our bag, and then we'd lock the door and leave the key in it, because if you get caught drinking in the house, like, that's it, you're out, gone. but we were like, fuck it, risk it for a chocolate biscuit. So we'd sit in the room and we'd get back on like a Sunday night, and we'd just be there thinking like Thatcher's Gold, like in our locked room and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where drinking started. But then I guess that's where drinking started for most people, sometimes even younger, right? It didn't seem like I was doing, and I wasn't doing anything unusual at the time, or I wasn't any different to anyone else, going out occasionally and getting smashed.
And is that how you felt continually drinking for the next? How did that escalate for the next? Like, I suppose what was next? Like, in terms of your drinking, like, you know, I agree.
Carnage.
17, 18, I agree. Like, that was like, I'm not different to anyone else. Everyone else is doing this, and this. We're going out, we're getting fake IDs. We're going to, like, for me, it was like a place called Rat and Parrot. We're all going there. Fantastic. This is great. The biggest excitement was, am I going to get in with my fake ID or not? So I suppose for you, like, you know, we'll touch upon it now, but like, how old were you when your mum unfortunately has passed? How old were you when she passed?
33. So it was 4.5 years ago.
So 4.5 years ago, yeah. So I suppose before then, what happened in terms of your boozing, and what happened in terms of your, well, how did it escalate?
It turned into utter fucking chaos. I was coaching tennis, and I did for about 10 years. I had a tennis club just outside of Bath, and how on God's earth I managed to do it for 10 years. Anyway, so I would, when I was 18, I went out in Bristol with a friend, and he bumped into another friend in this bar, and I'd never done drugs, and his friend said to my friend, "Oh, do you want a bit of this coke?" And my mates went, "Yeah, go on then." And they went into the toilet, and then they went, "Oh, do you want one?" I shit you not, I didn't. And I was like, "What is it?" Like, and he's like, "Coke." And I was like, "Well, how the fuck do you do that?" I was so like clueless to it, and I was so anti-drugs because of the whole sport thing and the whole tennis thing. I was like, "Oh, go on then, whatever." And I was like, "Do you have to do it on a specific side, or like, you know, like, do you do it this way or that way, or like?" I was asking all these fucking questions, like ridiculous questions. Anyway, I did one, and I was, you know, whatever, and I went on my night out, and I didn't get any more, asked for any more, or any of that. And then what happened was I started going out more when I was 19, 20, 21. It would be Monday night, Blue Rooms, Tuesday night was cheese night, Wednesday night was student night, Thursday night was Poonana, Friday, Saturday, wherever, Recover Sunday. Every single week. And there'd probably be people who watch this who are similar to my age, and they'd be like, yeah, I remember that. And we'd go out like 4 or 5 times a week and get smashed and go home, and it was like a pound of drink and whatever, and somehow I'd get up for work and bumble through work, and I did that up until I was about 20, and then I started just buying a little bit of coke, and I wouldn't buy it prior, but I would go out, I'd be a few drinks in, and I'd go and I'd make a phone call, and lo and behold, I'd have a gram or whatever. And to start with, and I ain't gonna bullshit about any of this, it was wicked, and it was like 40 quid, 30 quid, 40 quid at the time. And it was like I'd do a bit in the toilets now and again, and I'd just be absolutely all over the women. I'd be like chatting to the bouncers. I'd be like, it'd be amazing. I'd be telling them stories that never happened, and it was just like I was just like loving life. Bath's a big uni thing, so I was fucking everything that moved. Like I was just living la vida loca. Like it was amazing. And then what happened was before I would go out, I would know that I would get some, so I'd pre-order it, so I'd get a bit before, and I'd have a bit before I go out, and then I'd be out and doing it, and that sort of carried on for a while. And then there was a point where I would have to have, say, 2 or 3. And then it would be, well, the club's closed, but I've still got some on me. I've had 25 vodka Red Bulls. Ain't no way on this God's earth that I'm going to be going to sleep. So some bloke who I've just met, who's now my new best mate, I'm going to go to his house and we're going to get on it. And, you know, I'd sit in people's houses, kitchens, fucking anywhere. I remember being in a graveyard once, in parks. I remember doing 3 loops of Victoria Park, chatting to this bloke. And Victoria Park in Bath is massive, right? And it must have taken us about 2 hours. And I'm just walking around, just sniffing and just walking around, just chatting shit. And I'm like, it's like 5 in the morning. Like, it started getting a bit like silly. But I never sort of thought it was silly. And then when I was mid-20s, I I was £90,000 in debt, and it was all on credit cards and business loans, and I had absolutely nothing to show for it. And it was on drink and drugs and lads' holidays and bullshit, basically. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So I then had to get something called an IVA, which is an involuntary arrangement where the government basically helps settle it and your debts, and you have to, I had to pay, I don't know, for 5 years, I had to pay £312 a month. And I paid that off, and an ex's parents cleared some of it for me, and I ended up paying them back, obviously. And it just was, I wasn't getting anywhere. Since the age of 18, I've never had any money, but I was living a life like I was a fucking millionaire. And it was all like parties and going out, and there was never any issues. And then what happened is when it would get towards the end of the night, I would be absolutely hammered, and then I'd make a phone call and I'd get some more to take home. And I'd just be at home in my room on my own, looking at fucking whatever was on my phone, gambling, fucking winning, whatever it was. And just lying there and drinking and slipping. And until it was 7-8 o'clock in the morning. And then that was kind of like the next period. But through that period, I started to get a little bit of psychosis. So I'll never forget my dressing gown. It was like an extension on the top of the house, and my dressing gown was hung on the back of the door. And when I looked at my dressing gown, I could see this person like coming out from behind the dressing gown, and then quickly going back behind the dressing gown, and coming out, and then quickly going back behind the dressing gown. And there's no fucking person there. It was psychosis. And I remember going to the toilet and then coming back and looking on my bed, and I could see someone lying in my bed. And I was like, it was scary as fuck, and you're dripping with sweat. And it was a really, really not a very nice time. But I don't know, I didn't think, oh, that's not normal, you should now stop. I just fucking carried on. And the hardest thing for me, and if I get a bit emotional, is because it's about Mum, is when I would go home, and I live with Mum, obviously, I had to go past my mum's room to get to my room. And I was like on the floor above. And my mum would say, oh, hello, as I come in, like, you're late, or where have you been? Or, where I'd been at people's houses or whatever. It's 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And she had a lot of health issues. And she's like, I can't sleep when you don't come home. And my selfish brain at the time was like, well, I'm going out, I'm having a good time, I'm living my life. If you can't sleep, that's not. I felt bad that she didn't after the fact, but at the time I just carried on. And there'd be times where I'd be in the bedroom doing it, and then I'd have to get more, because I thought, I don't want to go back to reality, because my reality was, you're a failed tennis player, you're putting on weight, you're just a party boy now, right? So I would ring somebody who would then drive it, and they'd put it under the plant pot outside my mum's front door, or they'd post it through the letterbox really quietly. and then they text me done, and I'd have to go down the stairs, and my mum would be like, "What are you doing?" It's like 6 a.m. at this point. I'd be like, "Oh, I think I left the key in the door. I think I dropped my wallet outside. I think I left my car open. I don't know if I shut the front door properly." Like literally the most. And I thought at the time that my mum didn't know. Now my mum was quite a clever person. Like she knew. But I would come up with the most fucking, and I'd grab it and I'd get it back to the room before she get out of bed, and I go up into the room, and I would do it, and it would be awful. And the person that I was with at the time, she knew that I had done it, but she didn't know to the extent of what I was doing it. And there would be times where like she would be over, and I would say, "Oh, I need a shower," and I'd be like wired, and I'd be doing it in the shower. Now, how the fuck you do it in the shower? Like, and then I'd be like shoving it like the empty bag down the plug hole. Or like, I remember being absolutely wired one day because I'd been with this guy all day, and then we were meant to go for a meal at a mate's house, and I turned up there. I was like, "Oh, I don't feel well. Like, you're gonna have to go back to yours." And I was just absolutely wired. And then when she had gone back to her house, I then met a guy and carried on. Like, I didn't care that I wasn't with my girlfriend at the time. I just wanted to carry on. I didn't, and I've said this to you before. Like when you're like on it, you could have put 100 grand in cash in front of me and said stop, and you get 100 grand. I would have gone, "No, fuck off, I'm carrying on. I don't care."
And why is it you think that? What, I suppose with all of this, what is it you were probably missing, and what is it you were chasing? Like there's two. I think I'm going to use in. Yeah, what is it? What is it you were missing, and what is it you're chasing?
I think a lot of it stems from maybe a bit of an, and this is not an excuse at all, but like maybe a bit of an odd childhood, not having a father figure, and just being an addict and an alcoholic. And I accept that now, and I can say it quite easily because that's part of my makeup, and that's part of who I am. It doesn't make me good or bad. Like it is what it is, and it is like. You can call it a disease. Some people won't because they're like, "No, you should just stop." But you can't. Like, you just can't. Like, and you know this yourself. But what I was doing was, I wasn't. I didn't want to go back to reality. So, I didn't want to go back to reality. So I
Carrying on, basically.
want to just carry on, right? And no matter what yeah, I would just want to carry on the whole time because my reality was, again, this failed tennis player, wasn't particularly happy. And it got to a point where there was no joy in anything. I couldn't find any joy in anything other than getting fucked. So, like, if someone said to me, "Hey, let's go-kart," I'd be like, "Oh, can we just go out?" Like, or like, do you want to play golf or like whatever? Unless it involved drinking or drugs or something, I just couldn't. I just didn't want to do it because it was the instant gratification and the escapism of being able to do the drinking and drugs and be in a different, not having to think about it or worry about it because it doesn't matter, and you lose all of your inhibitions like when you're doing it, and it just fucking it's yeah.
So you were escaping a reality that you weren't exactly enjoying.
100%. I hated it, and it escalated. It escalated more and more, and then when I was fucking hell, how old am I now? It's mad, isn't it? When I was 27, I think it was 27, 28. I volunteered for. Ironically, I was in a pub. Weird that. And there was a stall in the garden. It was like a summer's day, and they were advertising for people to be volunteers for a disabled charity. Anyway, I was about 8 pints of cider deep, so I signed up to this thing, and then fucking forgot all about it. And then 3 months later, it was like, "Oh, congratulations! Like, you're going to be a volunteer at Bracklesham Bay Holiday Park in August." And I was like, "What the fuck?" And then I was like, "Oh, I remember. I remember signing up to it." And it's like, click. Anyway, so I went to this this Bracklesham Bay thing, and when I was down there, when I was doing all the volunteering, I met someone, and cut a long story short, the person I was with at the time, I broke up with them to be with this other person, and she lived in Portsmouth and I lived in Bath, and she knew my background, and I had some debt at the time that she then cleared off for me. Like, it was all like, and it was wicked. And then she moved to Bath, and we had a great relationship. And then, but I wouldn't stop, and she was like, "I really hate it when you do that," but I just wouldn't stop, and I couldn't stop, and I couldn't stop, and I couldn't stop. At one point, the last straw, if you like, I run it. The last straw was when I went out for an evening, and then I think it was about 3 or 4 o'clock the next afternoon, and she was home when I walked in, and I had just a load of stuff around my face, and she was like, "I'm leaving you," and it was at that point where it took a really dark turn.
Did it dawn on you then, like, that this is you're not fucking about now? Like, did it dawn on you, like?
This was like, you're now 28 years old, you're 10 years deep on this bollocks. Okay, you need to fucking sort your shit out. And she had left me, and it broke me to the point where I was back on antidepressants. My mum didn't want me to move back in with her. I was
How did that feel?
I was at the lowest point in my life. It was horrendous. I just didn't want to live. I didn't want to live, in all honesty. And I couldn't believe at the time that and there was one thing that she said that will always stick in my mind. She was like, "Sam, if you hadn't have done the drinking, the drugs in the excess that you have," she said, "I'd never have left you." And it was like, fuck. And I begged, and I was like, "Come on, we do this, and I'll do this, and I'll do that." And she left, and she took her stuff, and she took our 2 cats, and she fucked off. And I was sat in this house in Bath that we rented at the time, and so I just got on it.
Yeah.
What
What hurt more, the fact that she'd said this is it, or that your mum said you can't come back with me? Like,
I think that was kind of a given with my mum. You know, I was like 28. I'd moved out, and she was like, "I can't have this under my roof." Like, I had borrowed money at that point. I'd borrowed thousands and thousands of pounds over periods of time from my mum that she couldn't afford to give me. I made my mum get a credit card. Like, I was a vindictive prick. I lied to friends and family. I went on stag do's and birthdays and ruined them. I treated friends like shit. I borrowed money off like tennis clients. I borrowed money off my accountant. I would say that I'm just struggling a bit at the moment, or bills have gone up, or I'm a bit behind on car payments, and it was all just to pay off debts. It was a really, really shitty period of my life. And my mum said, "Look, I'll put a deposit down on somewhere for you." And at this point, I was selling cars. Now, the car industry is full of salesmen, and a lot of sales has got a very there's a lot of people in sales who do a lot of drinking drugs. And I was a car salesman, right? You know, I'd stopped doing the tennis coaching. I'd had enough of that. That's all I'd ever done. Fuck, something else. So I was doing car sales, and my mum said I should put a deposit on a place called Peasdown. Now, Peasdown has got some lovely people in, but it's not the nicest area in the world. Let's just leave that at that. And I lived in this flat. I'll never forget, you went into this flat and you had to go upstairs because it was like someone was underneath, like a masonette or whatever you want to call it. And I was just flat out drinking and using. And I used to sleep with a knife next to my bed. and my door had 8 locks on it. Anyway, it turned out that the guy who used to live there got thrown out because he was dealing crack. So I was like, oh, fucking brilliant. So like, I live in this old crack house. I was lonely as fuck. A load of my mates didn't want to speak to me or see me anymore. I was just getting delivery after delivery of coke. I was borrowing money left, right, and centre, and it got really, really bad. And I remember it was like a Wednesday, and I was sat outside of this pub at like lunchtime, drinking a double vodka and coke, and I rang my mum, and I was like, "Yeah, it's time." And she was like, "You want to go?" Because we had previously spoken about rehab, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll go, but I'll only go if the girl who had just left me, once I've done 4 weeks in rehab, gives it another go with me." And my mum said, "Forget that. You need to do this for you." And I was like, well, and I was just ruined, like absolutely ruined. Anyway, this guy, I never forget, he turned up in this battered old Vauxhall Vectra estate, and he came to my mum's house and he picked me up, and he chain smoked the entire way down to Southampton in his car, just chatting about shit. And I was like, I don't need to go to rehab. I'm just really depressed that my missus has left me. I don't need to go to rehab. I don't need to go here. And I went to this rehab, and now rehab works for some people and not for others. And it's not got a particularly high rate of people that do it and then succeed. I think it's something like 18% who never actually use or drink again. You know, that might not be fact, but it's somewhere in that region. And I shared a room with a guy who had been on crack and heroin for 35 years. There were people going in and out all the time. It was the worst, shittest area in the world. And I remember at the evening you had to write down like your feelings. And I would just write my ex's name. And then I was in for about 3 or 4 days, and it was awful. It was boring, and you weren't allowed to watch the TV, and it was just, I fucking hate it. And I was like, do you know what? I got to day 6, I was like, fuck this, I'm leaving. And my mum, I don't know how she got the money. I think she borrowed it or got a loan. I can't remember. She paid 6.5 grand for me to go. And after 6 days, I was like, they took your phone off you, but there was like a pay phone you could use, and you had to ask to borrow 40p. And I was like, Mum, I literally can't do this. I'm fine. I won't drink. I won't use. I'm fine. I'll be good. And I'll leave. And she was like, don't leave. And I was like, oh, I've got to leave. And I had a few grand in my account, well, a couple of grand even, not a lot at the time. And I knew that there was this company, Holidays of Help. I was in Southampton, and they were doing one of these volunteer holidays, like fucking, I can't remember, like up north somewhere. And I walked out of rehab with this bag, and I walked to the train station, and I got a train from Southampton all the way up to this thing. And I went from rehab to volunteering with adults on the same day. And on the way up, I drank 4 cans of Stella. After,
rehab went well, yeah.
I can laugh about it now because, like, I am who I am now. And I did this holidays thing and volunteering with adults, and I helped out, and they loved it. And I was drinking in the evenings, and I was back to how I was. Like, there was no difference in me at all. I never used when I was doing these holidays. I just want to point that out because, like, obviously I was volunteered, but we did in the evening when everyone had gone to bed. Everyone would just drink and get on it till like 2, 3 in the morning. And then you're up and early, and I forgot the question now. But yeah, so that's kind of how it escalated to that point, and then even from there, obviously, there's another 10 years of absolute carnage. So, do you want me to tell you about that, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, like the following years of carnage. What do you reckon that's cost you financially?
So, I started speaking to you just over a year ago, and as you know, I had a few hiccups.
Yeah,
I think it was about 80 days without drinking, and then I went, and I'm currently I lose count. Like, I'll be honest with you, I think I'm at about 2.5 months ish, somewhere in that region, right? But over since I started speaking to you, and I've turned a corner massively in the last couple of months, as you're aware. But we'll go into that. Over the last 3 years, I've spent over £250,000 on drink, drugs, or gambling.
How does that, like, I know we've laughed and we've had it, like, you've been obviously so open and honest and vulnerable about it. But how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like I never feel like I'm worthy of having money or being happy or being healthy. So I like punished myself. So what would happen was, and that's what we spoke about a lot, is I would build up a load of money in the business account, and then I'd be like, oh, I deserve a drink. And then I'd go for a drink, and that drink would turn into 6,000 drinks, and doing drugs, and fucking whatever, like gambling. People take advantage of me and borrow money, and it was just, yeah. So, but I think in the 20 years, I mean, I was earning as a tennis coach 45, 50 grand a year. I reckon I was spending probably 35 of it on going out, right? Or gambling, drinking drugs. So I did that for 10 years. That's 350 grand. Then from 28 to 38, probably another, probably over £1 million.
And as we spoke over like the last year and a bit, because there's again been some, if you don't mind me saying, like you said, blips, stronger times, tough, challenging times. Was there a time when you just thought, I can't do this anymore, or what's been your, I hate using it, but what has been? Was there a rock bottom for you?
Yeah, I mean, this whole rock bottom thing, I think, is fucking bullshit. I think that you can have a rock bottom, and then you can have a lower rock bottom, and another rock bottom, and another rock bottom, like we spoke about.
Yeah.
What is rock bottom? Everyone's got a different rock bottom. You need to hit rock bottom, and you don't.
No, you don't.
I over the last few years, obviously not so much recently since speaking with you, it got so bad that I would miss work. I'd go for a drink, and then I'd use, and then I'd gamble, and then I'd go home, and then I would lie on my bed, and I would gamble more, and I would drink more, and then it'd be the next day. And I never ever used to do this, but then what I would do is I would then carry on, and it didn't matter who or what I needed to do. If I had work, if I had appointments, if I was meant to see friends or family or my partner or whatever, I would carry on. And so I would get Deliveroo or whatever, Steve, and they would deliver me a couple of litres of vodka and some Coca-Cola, and then I'd ring my dealer, and I would go, my dealer, a dealer, and I would go meet him, and it got crazy to the point where I was taking like maybe 10, 15 grams of Coke and drinking 3 or 4 litres of vodka. And then I just keep going and keep going and keep going. And then I would be sweating, there'd be psychosis, I wouldn't be eating, I'd be shaking. And then about a year ago, I went on a bender for 5 days. I'm quite a big bloke. I'm working on it. But it was the fucking scariest thing I've ever experienced. I drank 6 litres of vodka over 5 days. I did about £1,000 worth of Coke. I spent over 15 grand on gambling. I didn't eat in 5 days. I didn't drink any water. I couldn't stand up. I was shaking profusely. My heart, I didn't feel like my heart was even in my chest anymore. It would just beating so fast, it was almost like a continual beat. And I then thought, oh, so I took about 30 pills, super strong painkillers that I bought. I was in Spain. It was for back. I just smashed them back, and I was like this, and it was just horrendous. And eventually, I passed out. I don't know, and 24 hours later, I woke up, and I was like, I'm alive. And I rang my missus, and I was like, the classic, I'm so sorry there. And she was incredible. Like, and I put through some shit, and I've gone on benders for 2-3 days and ended up in like shitty hotels in like Enfield, or just like ridiculous, like disappearing, phones off, put through like absolute fucking hell, and friends and family and stuff like that. But that was such a bad experience. 2 days later, I just couldn't really stand up. I don't know how I managed to go to work. I couldn't barely eat. I felt sick. It was just awful. And I went to the doctors, and he was like, I told him, and my doctor at the time, he's left now, he sort of became a bit of a mate. He was like a similar age. And he was like, "Why are you alive?" Well, what do you mean? He was like, you shouldn't be alive. Like, if you did that, like science says, you shouldn't be alive." And he poked me in the side, and he poked me in the other side, and he went, "Hmm." He said, "You've got hepatitis C and pancreatitis." And I was like, "Sorry, like, stop speaking Japanese." And I got hepatitis C of the liver, I think it was, which is basically your liver is the next stage is cirrhosis, and my pancreas had just nearly shut down. And he was like, if he said you have got a 20% chance of not surviving this, and I was like, what? Even if I do everything you tell me now, like, and he was like, you need to eat yogurt and soups and not much protein. And he'd listed these things of what to eat and what to drink. And he said, if you do that, there is an 80% chance you'll get better, but I can't guarantee it. And I'd sooner tell you straight. I was like, thanks for telling me straight. And I left the doctor's, and I just cried. And I did everything he told me to do. But it's mad smiling about it, because if you don't smile, you just cry, right? I did everything he told me to do. And then I got better. And then a month later, I fucking drank again. And since then, he said, his words to me, his words to me were, rather, if you drink again, you will die. And I was in such a shit place. I didn't care. I've lost my mum. There's friends that won't speak to me, that it's their decision. I won't go into that. Who I miss. There's all of these negative things. I put on loads of weight, and I was just like, I don't care. Oh, and I started speaking with you, like I said, just over a year ago, and I don't know how you put up with me, because I'm a fucking nightmare.
What do you think? Yeah, okay. So when you started speaking to me, what do you think you've got out of it that maybe, if anyone's listening, and this is not a plug, this is your story, but what do you think you've got out of my support, my coaching, my style, that if anyone was listening, like, why me? And I know you got it was through someone else that we know, but when we first spoke, what is it you found in me that maybe you weren't getting off other people or rehab or whatever, and I have stuck with you kind of vibe, I suppose.
Yeah, I tried AA for a bit. Now, again, AA works for some people. I didn't particularly like it because it was very much like going back over old things and like, you know, about you know, what happened in the past and past stories and things like that with people. But with yourself, it was very much directed of like um what is it that you're looking forward to? What are your plans? What are the good things? What have you learned from your mistakes? What are we gonna do next time to stop you from having a drink? Because I never used without drinking. It was always the other way around, right? So it was like, how are we gonna, and you're very to the point, and you're very, and we have a laugh and we talk about other things that are like not even fucking related, and sport and well, everything, right? And we've met up a few times and it's wicked, and we played golf and gone for lunch. And what I've now started doing, or what you've told me to do, which is why I'm now in the position that I am, which is right now I'm in the best position that I have been in mentally for um 20 years. I think, really, when I look back at it, over all of the things and the letting mum down, and one of, like I say, my biggest regret is letting mum down, and I think that was one of the things, because I didn't become a tennis player. I was like, I felt like I'd let her down, and so I was like, oh, I've let her down, I may as well just go on a fucking rampage now. But with you, it's more like, okay, like even when I've gone on a mad one, and like the worst I ever did is in a night out spend £18,000. I mean, who the fuck, unless you're fucking like Drake, like who the fuck spends 18 grand on a night out, right? And you were like, okay, no worries. So what have you learned? What are the wins? And I was like, I mean, what the fucking wins? Spent 18 grand, skin. My missus fucking hates me. I've taken all the money out of the business. And you're a fucking loon. Yeah, but, and you were like saying things like, yeah, but you were able to do that. A lot of people are not in a position to be able to do that. And I was like, right, how good was that you had 18 grand that you could spend on a night out? Not that I could spend on a night out because HMRC wanted most of it. They go, fuck off. And it's that sort of things like, luckily, no one's died, right? So what have you learned from this, and what are you going to do going forward? And journaling, you send me like weekly reports of like, you know, what are the wins this week? What have you done? What are the three best? And when you pick up the phone, what's the best part of your day? I'm like, mate, it's fucking like 8 a.m. I don't know. I had a boner when I woke up. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, what?
That's a win, though, right? Some
Yeah,
people don't
what a
get
win.
bonus.
So yeah, that's the difference with yourself. I couldn't sit in a room and listen to Terry telling me how he used to drink 25 pints a day. Like, it literally bored me to tears. I would want to leave and go and drink. Like, and that's linked with my ADHD and stuff like that as well, I think. But it just, for me, the right way to it just works for me. And like, you know, like the old saying, like when people like say smoke and then they smoke a cigarette, and then the next thing they do is like smoke a spliff, and then it like leads on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah,
Like,
gateway, isn't it?
literally for me, it was like that, and it turned into a point where I was gonna die. I either stop or I die.
Yeah.
But with yourself, like the help it's given me, and it has been you, and it has been, you know, I'm on Men and Their Emotions group that Dapper runs, and yourself, and Gary's been amazing, and Jared's been amazing, and a few friends, and my missus, and like it's been like class.
Predominantly, I suppose the thing is like predominantly, you know, the end of it all, you've done the work. Like, there's only we are there to to hold space, to help you, to coach you, to point you in that direction, instead of being like, okay, cool, not another 18 grand, not another 10k, not another 8k, not another whatever it may have been. But it's also making you realize that actually, like, look, yes, you could have had a fucking Beamer and a brand new house or whatever, but also, like, you're human and we all make mistakes. But I think the thing of it all is like, in what I've seen in the growth and what I'm proud of the most with you is that you've become someone who loves them. I don't know, maybe it's a bit of an airy fairy, but yeah, someone who really actually likes themselves now. Do you see what I'm saying? This bit for me, that's one of the hardest. Even you talking today, like, failed tennis, but you haven't failed. You fucking tried. You know, your mum, like, do you know what I mean? And the thing is like, we're all guilty of how we see ourselves. You know, even just before I got on, I was like, oh, yeah. But like, I think what makes me proud of you specifically is, like, you've never gave up, even though you've tried. You've always listened to me. Okay, we've had a few fucking run-ins, but I think the run-ins are from both of our egos, and also me actually giving a fuck about you. I think that the things that have come from this is a great friendship, but also, like, a great understanding that is, even if I do say to you, like, come on, stop being a cunt, I mean it in a good way. Do you know what I mean? And at first, maybe you thought, oh, he's just trying to do this and that, but I think now you understand that where it comes from a place of love and giving a shit. I think now that you have grown and are doing,
I don't want to
like,
grow anymore. Try not to fucking grow.
But you're doing all these great stuff, and it's just like, I think it's individually, like, I know what you've been through. I understand because I've been through some of it. Probably not the financial side of it, but I have spent a lot more money than maybe I wanted to. You know, I haven't. But I think that, you know, you're a proof that every journey is different, and it doesn't, because there's a lot of people out there, and again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but there's a lot of people out there say that AA is the only way, and it still goes on.
Yeah.
On my socials, AA is the only way, and like, and rehab, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm fucking proof. I've done both.
Yeah.
Neither of them worked, and then I talked to you and it's worked. So
yeah,
I think each to their own, but look at the statistics of it. I mean, the percentage record of speaking to someone like yourself and actually fucking doing what they say, rather than sitting in some shitty home and, like, almost going like cold turkey, or sitting around each other, like around a load of other addicts or alcoholics or whatever. It's statistically better to speak to someone like yourself. You got more chance. AA is an amazing thing, and it's saved lots of people's lives, right?
Yeah, loads.
But it doesn't work for me, and I strongly believe that you would have more success in speaking to someone like yourself. So, like, if anyone thinks, oh God, this is getting a bit out of hand, yeah, I don't think. So I feel like you're slowly losing me. No, you're good. Yeah, if anyone feels like, oh, this is getting out of hand, or fuck me, I'm still drinking, or I'm missing work, or I'm spending too much money, or like, oh, it will, whether you think it fucking will or not, or whether you think that you're just fucking built different, or you make more money than everyone, or, your missus will never find out, or it won't lead to other drugs, or it won't end up you being on benders, and it won't end up you being ill, like, you're a fucking dick. Like, it will. I don't care who you are, or what colour you are, or what fucking country you're from. You will eventually get to that point. Whether it's in 6 months, or 6 years, or 16 fucking years, who fucking knows? But you will at some point get to that point. If you've got this addiction, bug, illness, call it what the fuck you want, it's something in you. It's science. It's fact. Like, there was a really good thing I saw the other day where this guy said, if you went out for a coffee with someone, right, and then they had some peanuts, and they ate a peanut, and they had an allergic reaction, would you then, like, next time you go for a coffee with them, would you go, oh, have a peanut? You wouldn't, because you know that person has a peanut, they'd have an allergic reaction. I'm allergic to alcohol in a roundabout way. If I drink it, I'll fucking go to town, like, and I will drink for days, and I'll do other things, and I'll fuck things up, and I'll fuck up relationship and my health and my business. And so I know that I can't. Now, we've had conversations in the past where I've gone, oh, but I just want to drink on occasions. I was just mugging myself off. And then, like, I have. And then guess what? That occasion turns into a 2-3 day bender on Marcus. I spent 10 grand. And you're like, oh, so can you drink on occasions? And I'm like, no. And then 3 months later, I'll be like, oh, well, I'm going to this wedding, and I think that it'd be okay because I'm surrounded by people.
Yeah.
And then, like, that turns into guys. No matter where you are in the world, you will always drink and be able to find drugs. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, occasions, like, especially as I've said on previous podcasts with other people, occasions could mean anything, like a fucking Thursday night. That could be an occasion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you can put, I think, and this is why I struggle with people when they say, oh, I just want to cut down and do this, because cutting down, moderation, you're still focused on the thing you're trying to stop. So if I'm cutting down or trying to moderate, I'm still focused on booze or drugs. So if
Yeah.
and I was like, so what? Like, cutting down and moderating looks like A, B, and C, but like you're actually still focused on that thing. So yeah, I think like the special occasions, you can label it like any time you want. So like, oh, it's Thursday. It's Thursdays. Like, that's my special occasion.
I had a good day. I had a bad day. I had whatever. Yeah. No, 100%. Like, it has to be. You have to. I think, and you agree. Like, you either stop drinking or you drink. But I just can't. And the thing that the biggest thing that you said to me is, when you stop drinking, you can't just stop drinking and then not do something. You have to replace it with something. And I'm not saying like drink and replace it with drugs, but I'm saying you have to then replace it with something like healthy or of interest or something that's going to distract you. So what I've started doing now is I've started doing, it might not look like it, but I started doing, fuck me, what do you call them? Like classes every morning, like circuit classes, like with a mate who runs it, right? It now excites me knowing that tomorrow morning I've got to get up at 5:30 and be in the car at 6:15 to drive 25 minutes to run around like a prick for an hour before I go to work. Now, if you said that to me a year ago or 2 years ago, I'd be like, no, no. It excites me to like eat better. So like I'm smashing loads of protein and I've given myself a year to lose the weight that I want to lose, and I will do it because I'm so focused on it. And I take supplements and I'm eating really well. And that's now my addiction, if you like. I've replaced it with that. We meet up. I go for nice meals out. We go away on more holidays because we've got more money. I've got a business that's doing, turning over 6 figures every year. Like,
Incredible.
I can pay the bills. I've got a beautiful house. I've got all of these things because I'm a bit of a stubborn prick, like, as you know. And if I put my head to it, but all I've been putting my head to for the last 20 years is, I'm a failure. How can I get fucked and cover that? And it's hard. And I said this to you yesterday. I had a bit of a stressy day, and something happened with the business. Not major, but like whatever, right? And it's fine. But what I would have done a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, is I would have gone, something's happened with the business. I'm going to go get pissed, because then when I'm pissed, I'm not thinking about it. But what I did today, because of what happened yesterday, is I resolved what happened yesterday. And I didn't spend any money and try and cover it up. But it was really, really difficult because I have to now sit with my emotions and my feelings, and I have to deal with them in a way. So what I've done now as well is, sounds a bit poncy, but I've joined a local spa, and it cost me over £2,000 a year. But what's that in comparison to what I was spending? Like
You're
what?
spending that in an hour, weren't you?
Exactly, right? So
It's
so
fucking
three.
bargain that, I
I
tell
know. So 3 or 4 times, and it's 2 minutes down the road. It's like one of the best spas in the UK. And I go there and I go into like hydration or whatever you call it, and they like jets coming out of everywhere, and there's like a fucking salt room and swimming pool outside, inside jacuzzis, like amazing healthy food. And if I feel like I'm sat at home with my thumb up my arse, which is not very often because I'm busy running the business, but if I am, then I'll go and there's nothing to do, rather than just going scroll, looking at fucking donkey videos or whatever the fuck you end up looking at, midget porn. No, not midget porn. But like,
you.
then I will then get up, put my swimming trunks on, go to the spa for a couple of hours. So I've done, if something, the way I see it now, if it isn't going to improve my life or enhance my life or enhance my friends or family's life or my business, I ain't going to do it.
Boom. Mic drop. Look at that. So, mate, wrapping things up, this has been a beautiful hour and a half, and I've fucking loved it. What advice would, this is probably a bit of a difficult one for you, but what advice would you give to Sam in his drinking heyday, drinking and using heyday, and why would you give him that advice?
I would have, this is where the father figure thing, I think, would have maybe come in. My mum was a wonderful person, but I would have, as soon as it started to get a little bit out of hand, or you know, like either using at home or the drinking at home or the getting into a lot of debt, that is the point where I would have gone whole, I'll reel this in, right? Because this is going to escalate. I still am stubborn that I just didn't do that, but that's what I would have done. And I've had some amazing times with friends and family over the last 20 years, but I regret so much of the lies and the deceit and the bullshit and the losing. Me and Mum were on amazing terms when she passed, which was like incredible for me, because and she could see that I was trying to turn my life around.
Yeah, I love it.
And she was like, yeah, I went and saw this like fucking spiritual bollocks. I'm not really into that, but I was just feeling a bit, and she was like, "Have you got any questions for your mum?" And I never told her my mum had died, and she was like, "Your mum's here," and I was like, "Okay, whatever." And I was like, "Is she proud of me?"
Oh, me too, man. Jeez.
Is she
It's
proud
fucking
of me?
took the fucking wind out of my sails.
And this woman, and she had this like pendant thing that if it like went that way, it was like yeah, and if it went that way, it was no, and it would just go boom, 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 and her fucking hand was still. And I don't know whether it's real or whatever, but she went, yeah, of course she is, and that's the only thing in my head I needed to know that she was proud of me, but because I just was such a twat at times to her, and she didn't deserve a lot of the things I did. But
you're a little boy, right? And I'm proud of you, mate. I really am. Like you've come so far. Like even in the little time that we've known each other, you've come so far. And yeah, like you should be proud of yourself, mate. Like it's a massive, like that's some fucking story there, mate. Yeah, like yeah, I'm super proud of you. As is your mum, as is everyone around us, mate. Hats off to you. And look, this is your first interview, and I'm sure you'll be fucking flooded with requests now. Just with a better camera next time. I was joking.
Can you actually see me? All right.
Yeah, I can see you, mate. I can see you, mate. Seriously, like hats off to you for coming on. Like I said, you're my first client that's been on. Probably first of many, but like I really appreciate you coming on. Sam is on Facebook, Sam Kirby, if you want to find him on Facebook. If not, you can also find him in my free WhatsApp group. Look at a soft little plug there. But yeah, you can find him in my free WhatsApp group. He's very obviously, as you can see, he's inspirational as fuck. And one day we're going to play paddle, and I'm going to show him how to play paddle. So, mate, have you got anything, other words of wisdom? If someone was looking to quit boozing today, what would you say to them?
I'd say, and I'm not just saying this to try and, brown nose you, but I would say you need to speak to someone like Marcus. You need to get on groups and like Men and Their Emotions. You need to surround yourself with. You can't quit and then just hang about with these people that are still getting on it, because you eventually you'll just go back there again. So you have to surround yourself with people who are like trying to be on the same journey as you, and you might lose some friends along the way. Who gives a fuck? At the end of the day, you're still alive, and but go speak to Marcus and speak. You want to speak to me and message me and whatever. But speak to people and reach out, and don't be ashamed or embarrassed, because it really does get to a real sticky, shitty, horrible end. And unfortunately, the amount of people that commit suicide or die because of this, because of drinking drugs, is out of control in this country. And we've got this terrible thing that everywhere we go, we just end up getting fucked, and it's just bollocks, really. It's not life. You go and live it and go and do fun things, and
love that, mate. Also, like what you said there, I 100% agree. And I said it to someone the other day, you can't heal in the same place that you got sick in.
No, I don't speak to who I thought were. I lost some good friends, and that was their decision, right? Whatever, and they can deal with me and the way I was, and that's fine. And you never know, in 5-10 years, it might all come around again. But there's a lot of people that I would go out with who were like drinking buddies, right? Who I thought were like my mates. But the only thing we ever did was go out. So it was like, well, they're my mates. And then when I now stop drinking, it's like, well, then you really find out who your real mates are. And from stopping drinking, I have made some of the most unbelievable friendships and done some of the fucking wackiest and weirdest, like going and watching fucking baseball, like with another mate who's in recovery, like training, like just doing like all these wicked things that are going to enhance my life. And I've got a great partner and a great stepson, and like life is on the up. I do have shitty days at times, and I do have days I think, oh fuck it, especially when the sun's out of me, we're gonna have a pint, but it won't be a pint. If it was a pint, we wouldn't be here, right?
Exactly, mate.
So
absolutely, mate. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it, mate. Have a sick evening.
All right, cool.